So life and death decisions. Sometimes they're filled with drama and trauma. Sometimes they call out to us, asking that we respond from the depths of who we are. Sometimes they're less dramatic. Sometimes they're day-by-day sorts of decisions. We're going to look at both kinds of decisions as we look to these three scriptures before us today. There we go. So in 597, as Jeremiah is ministering in the streets of Jerusalem, Babylon attacks. And the best and the brightest are taken into exile in Babylon. Among those who make that first journey to Babylon is a very young man named Ezekiel. In 587, 10 years later, there is a revolt among those who have been left behind in Jerusalem. And this time, Babylon spares no one. Jerusalem is turned to dust. And another group of people are taken on that long journey from the land of their home to Babylon, far, far from them. The land of their ancestor Abraham, but a land that is strange to them. And they had to wonder, would their fate be the same as the fate of the northern kingdom? The northern kingdom had disappeared about 150 years earlier. There had been an attack by Assyria. They had been taken captive. They had been scattered throughout the Assyrian Empire. And they're the 10 lost tribes of Israel. They disappear. And those in Babylon had to wonder, will that be our fate as well? That's sort of the backdrop for this vision, perhaps the best known vision in the book of Ezekiel. It's a battle scene. The battle is long over, and the bones of the soldiers are bleaching in the sun. And the question comes, can these bones live again? Can God bring life where there appears only death and destruction and devastation? Is there a future? Ezekiel, as he's sharing this vision with the people with whom he is ministering, say, the bones are like you. The bones are like you. And the question is, do we have a future? Do we have a life? Will we see home ever again? And God says to the prophet, prophesy to the bones. And they begin to rattle. They begin to make noise. They're coming together. And then flesh begins to appear and skin, but there's still no life. And God says to Ezekiel, prophesy to the breath. Prophesy to Ruach. Ruach is the Hebrew word for spirit, for breath, for life. It is Ruach, that mighty rushing wind across the face of the earth at creation itself. It is Ruach that makes Adam, shaped from the dust of the earth by the Creator of us all, come to life. And Ezekiel says, life is possible when the Spirit of God takes up residence in people like us. Do we have a future? We who feel like dry bones bleaching in the sun, is there hope for us? Will we find our way home? By the power of God's breath, if we decide to open our hearts and our lives to the breath that God would breathe in us, life is not only possible, it is our future. It is our hope. It comes from God. The God who breathed life into creation itself can breathe life into us. It's a life and death decision. And God's choice for folks like us is life and future and hope. Word comes to Jesus and his inner circle. We'll go to the next one. Lazarus is ill. Lazarus is a good friend of Jesus, along with Mary and Martha. And Mary and Martha send word to Jesus, please come. Lazarus is so sick, we need you. And Jesus knows that in many ways, on several levels, this will be a life and death decision. He says to his inner circle, it'll be okay. Lazarus is not going to die, really. He'll fall asleep, but it's okay. And he waits 2 days. And then he announces to that inner circle, it's time for us to go. It's time for us to return to Judea, to return to Bethany, this place just 2 miles from Jerusalem itself, from the center of the power of the Jewish nation, a Jewish nation that is seeking his life. And his disciples say to him, are you sure you want to do that? Those folks want to kill you. Why would you go back there? And we meet for the first time one of that inner circle whom we know better by an experience that he will have a little bit later in John's Gospel. Thomas, called Didymus, better known to most of us as Doubting Thomas, says to that inner circle who are not at all sure that Jesus setting forth for Judea and Bethany and Mary, Martha, and Lazarus is a good idea, he says, let us go with him, that we may die with him, if that's what it takes. Aware that this journey may be a life and death sort of decision, Doubting Thomas says, I'm there. I'll be with you. Let's go together. We're in this ministry together, and if God has guided us so far, if it's death that awaits us, then let us share it. For surely that must be God's will. Martha hears that they are coming. In fact, they are in the area, and she goes out to greet Jesus because a great number of folks have gathered at the house. Mourners, some of whom have come in genuine mourning for their friend Lazarus, whose life has ended. But others, perhaps, they're watching for Jesus. And Martha says, "You're too late. I wish you could have come sooner, but you're too late. No need to come to the house. It's too late." But Jesus says, "Where did you lay him?" And upon word that Jesus is there and is heading for the place in which Lazarus has been buried, some who were at the house come along. Lazarus, come out. I think we need to go to another slide. Lazarus, come out. The stone has been rolled away, and out comes Lazarus, still wrapped for burial, but stepping from the darkness of death into the wonder of light and life. Life and death decisions weave their way through this story. There is the decision to respond, not only from Jesus, but from his inner circle, Thomas urging his brothers on this journey of faith that they've shared to join Jesus in the movement to Judea, to Bethany, to Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. There is Jesus' decision upon arrival to act. Lazarus, come out. Step into the light of life that you have yet to live. What we know if we read on in the story is that for John's gospel, this decision to come to Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, to come to Bethany, to stand at the grave and call Lazarus to life, that whole thing is a life and death decision in another way. As John tells the story, it is this miracle that will seal Jesus' fate. Matthew, Mark, and Luke suggest that Jesus' fate is sealed with the tables being overturned in the temple on what we call Palm Sunday. In John's gospel, that event happens at the beginning of Jesus' ministry. And for John, it is this event that seals Jesus' fate. Caiaphas, who is the chief priest, will say to his inner circle, "We cannot allow this to continue. This indeed is the last straw. Is it not better," he will say, "that one man would die? Because if we let him continue, it'll mean the end of all of us." And from that point on, Caiaphas is committed to putting an end to Jesus' ministry. The irony of it all is that the decision to respond, the decision to join him, the decision to act, even though it has consequences, is a decision that brings life. And the fate that Jesus will experience is that which opens life's door for you and I. Life and death decisions, sometimes dramatic, sometimes traumatic, like Ezekiel's vision, like Jesus' journey to the Jerusalem vicinity, an act that will draw many people to faith, but will seal the resolve of Caiaphas and the inner circle that this young rabbi must go. And yet even that is a decision that brings death on sort of the front page, but opens life in a way that they could not have anticipated, and we will be celebrating in just a few weeks. And then in Romans, Paul talks about everyday decisions. Sometimes the decision between life and death is an everyday sort of thing. Paul says, some folks, they choose the flesh. Common English Bible helps us understand what he may have meant by that. Common English Bible says, sometimes we choose to be selfish. Our life is all about us. Our life is all about what we can get, what we can gain, what we can have, the power, the influence. It's all about us. That's life in the flesh. And Paul says when we make all about us kind of decisions, we think we're choosing life, but we're really choosing death. When we choose instead decisions not all about us, but all about those in our lives, the others with whom we walk this journey of life. When we make decisions that are guided by God's Spirit, wind, life, creation itself, we are choosing life. So as you move through this week, as we move through this Lenten journey, pay attention to life and its possibilities, to death and its deception. And in case you haven't already guessed, God's choice has always been that you and I would choose life.